The new code of NLP emerged in the mid-1980s when John Grinder, who at the time was working with Judith Delosier, sought to correct what he perceived to be a number of coding errors in the classic code of NLP. So we now have the classic code of NLP, which is the NLP that John Grinder created with Richard Bandler, roughly from 1972 through to 1979. And then we've got the new code of NLP, which started to emerge around about the mid-1980s with John Grinder, who worked at the time with Judith Delosier. He was then joined by Carmen Bostic Sinclair, who he's worked with, I think, for the last 18 years in constantly developing and refining the new code patterns. And more recently, myself and several other collaborators who have joined the new code adventure, or we should call it the evolving code adventure, because it always evolves, new patterns come in. And it's the thing we seek to do in the new code of NLP is to constantly create new processes, new ways of thinking, in order to help our clients and the people we're working with achieve higher levels of excellence and change in their own lives. So let me talk about a couple of distinctions in the classic code and the new code. Now, way back in the classic code, when Bandler was originally working with Grinder, the interventions that they created operated primarily at a behaviour level. And this is still pretty much the same in classic code NLP. Those people who focus their interventions primarily on classic code performance is they get what they call a technique, and within that technique, if they're working with a client in a coaching context, they think of what is the behaviour you want to change. And behaviour works at this level. It's isolated usually to a specific context. And what behaviour then would you like to have here as a substitute? So very much in the classic code of NLP, the emphasis was on programming. We will reprogram you. You have this behaviour or this output here. We will reprogram you to have a new behaviour. Which new behaviour would you like? Now notice with this, the flaws here. One of the flaws is that the conscious mind of a client, which has a limited resource set, is responsible for choosing the new behaviour. So you consciously choose this. Therefore, the ecology is minimized. You know, we smash this behavior from one context into another and hope for the best. It's very much a cowboy process. Hope for the best. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And invariably when it doesn't work is because the intention of this so-called behavior hasn't been taken into account. Therefore, one of the distinctions that occurs in the new code is we work very much at an intention level. What is the intention of these, if we want to use that word behaviour, these behaviours that is occurring in a specific context? That would be one key distinction, working very much at an intention level. Secondly, the new code, we create a context through lots of different ways to manipulate the client's state. Therefore, we're not working at a behaviour level, we're working at a state level. And state operates at a higher logical level than behaviour and includes within it multiple new behaviours or choices. Some of which, in the change process, that client consciously may not have even considered or may not even realise that he or she has access to. But by manipulating state through what we call new code processes or new code games, multiple choices can emerge, multiple new behaviours can emerge in that area where that client wants change. So that is another distinction, is we're working at a state level. And the states we create are high performance states and sometimes know-nothing states. And we arrive at these states through what is called a new code game that manipulates physiology, it manipulates left and right hemispheres of the brain, it manipulates all three representational systems to create these high performance states. And a high performance state is, as it sounds, a state of high performance. And a know-nothing state is a strange name, I know, because it's a know-nothing, know-everything state. And it's a state of pure performance. And when you're in that state of pure performance, it's a state of pure performance but not knowing the level of purity you're performing at, where you have access to pretty much everything that's in the system. By manipulating these states and then transferring these states to the contexts where the client wants more choice, as I said earlier, multiple choices occur that are created not consciously through ramming one conscious behaviour into another, but quite a generative and unconscious level, and thereby creating two distinct, different styles of working using the two different, if you like, paradigms that exist within NLP, or at least two of the different paradigms that exist in NLP. Now, the bridge pattern, if you like, that paved the way for the development of the new code was a pattern that was created in the classic code called the six-step reframe. And if anybody has read the old books, Reframing, Frogs into Princess, this six-step reframe is written down in quite laborious language, where the practitioner is coaching a client to communicate with the part responsible for his behaviour, explicate the intention of his part, communicate with the creative part. So the language was quite laborious. Now, if you look within that pattern that was written up in Frogs into Princess and Reframing, there is a difference that many people missed when reading that book, and even when it was taught by people other than John Grinder. And that is the utilisation of an involuntary response within a client and the testing of that involuntary response. This is direct communication with the unconscious mind. Unconscious mind, communicate with me. Test, we have communication. Unconscious, offer me new choices that satisfy the intention of this. I don't need to know them, but offer them to me and confirm that we've actually got them in place. So that when I go back into the context of where this challenge was in my life, I have access to these choices that have come from within the unconscious. It's a really generative pattern that works so effectively. But few people in NLP, through reading the books, and I must say a number of high-profile NLP trainers who've not been exposed to the new code, totally misunderstood that pattern. And they say it creates parts because we talk about a creative part. Well, that's a complete misnomer. Because if it created parts because we talked about a creative part, just through that suggestion, it's highly likely that anybody would have parts created just through watching a television film because they'd be so suggestive. So that's a misnomer about that old six-step reframe. But I do accept that the language of it, the old six-step reframe, was quite cumbersome. But if we focus on what was the bridge, and that is the utilisation of intention, and secondly, involuntary signal, and convert that then to how it features in the new code as the NStep pattern, not necessarily as 6 steps, but utilises the key variables within the pattern. We have direct communication with the unconscious mind, verified for an involuntary signal. We have that our unconscious mind actually confirms, yes, there is a positive intention behind this behaviour, we use that word, that the client is experiencing. The client doesn't even need to know what that positive intention is. And we have an agreement verified with the unconscious that yes, it will find at least 5 new choices that will satisfy that intention, but are different from the consequences that the original behaviour is getting. What occurs is that client goes into the context as to where he or she experienced the challenge and has access, once again, from the unconscious mind, choices that he or she probably hadn't even considered. What I've described here in terms of how we use direct negotiation with the unconscious, i.e. NStep reframe, utilisation in new code games, are processes that allow the greater part of that client's system to be the catalyst or the key point for change. Classic code, a consciously mediated, limited process. In a sense, get behaviour A, put it on behaviour B. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. New code, elegant, ecological, easier to imply, but the key point is then for the new code practitioner, application on self. We have a saying in the new code. Apply these patterns on yourself. Get congruent so you understand them at a deep level. And then you can change the world.